Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned. And today we're going to be talking once again about one of my favorite publishers. I've mentioned this publisher quite a number of times, and that is the Library of America. The Library of America, the publisher who produces these fantastic books of classic American literature and the greatest American authors who write such literature. This is the Fitzgerald volume, F. Scott Fitzgerald, who of course is in the Library of America. This is not controversial at all, this choice to be in the Library of America. But there are some other authors in the Library of America who have been kind of controversial. What is the Library of America? Well, it is a nonprofit publisher. I'll read the little blurb on the back real quick. The Library of America, a nonprofit publisher, is dedicated to preserving America's best and most significant writing in handsome, enduring volumes featuring authoritative texts. They're just wonderful, wonderful, little compact hardcover volumes that pack a lot in these little books. They're just lovely, and I have a ton of them. I have a lot of Library of America books. But every year they choose more authors to be in the Library of America. And when they choose, they decide based on whether these authors are the best, have written the best, or the most significant writing. And it's interesting, some of the choices that they've made. Like I said, no surprise that F. Scott Fitzgerald is in here. That is something that you would expect. But they've also picked some other authors who might be a little bit more surprising. The Library of America has always seemed to have a soft spot for crime fiction. Now, Raymond Chandler is in the Library of America and has been for years and years, and deservedly so. But Raymond Chandler did start off as a pulp writer, and I could see where that would kind of create a prejudice if Raymond Chandler did not have the status as an American writer that he does. He's fantastic and amazing, Raymond Chandler. And so, this is, again, not a controversial choice, but it does show that Library of America was willing to look at pulp writing, or writing that emerged from the pulps, which Raymond Chandler's writing did, and look at the quality of the writing despite, the genre that it was in. But like I said, for some reason, Library of America has always been open to crime fiction, where it took a lot longer for the Library of America to open itself up to, say, science fiction writers and horror writers. But it has eventually done that. One of its best choices, I think, has been, of course, H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft had been previously published in Penguin Classics, so that kind of laid the way for this, I think. But this was a controversial choice. There were a lot of critics who were unhappy with Lovecraft being in the Library of America. He, of course, deserves to be in the Library of America, because even if you don't think he's one of America's best writers, he certainly is one of the most significant. H.P. Lovecraft has been enormously influential in American writing and culture, actually. So even if you don't think H.P. Lovecraft is one of the best writers, and I do think he is, he certainly deserves to be in here. And so that was cool. And recently, one of my very favorite writers made it in, fairly recently. Ray Bradbury has a couple of volumes in the Library of America now. This was the first volume, which reprinted The Martian Chronicles, Fahrenheit 451, Dandelion Wine, and Something Wicked This Way Comes. I was really happy to see Ray Bradbury get in the Library of America. Again, an author who deserves it. But there are a lot of authors who deserve to be in the Library of America, I think, who are not in the Library of America for one reason or another. And I think those of us who read a lot can all think of some authors that we think should be in the Library of America but are not. But I have a list. It was supposed to be a list of 10, but it ended up being a list of 11. I couldn't take any of these authors off. But this is my list for authors who should be in the Library of America but aren't. And, you know, if you're a booktuber and you have your own list that you think should be in there, you know, throw it up. I would be interested in seeing it. Now, the first one, of course, this is me. So, of course, you know, Robert E. Howard is number 1 on this list. My favorite author of all time and the greatest pulp writer of all time, Robert E. Howard. It is the fact that he is a pulp writer and the type of pulp writing that he wrote that keeps him from this list, I think, even though the quality of his writing is exceptional. He's a great writer, Robert E. Howard. And I don't think the fact that he is a pulp writer or the fact that he wrote horror and fantasy should keep him out of the Library of America, considering how significant the work that he's written has been. Again, an enormously successful and influential writer. And people will always, I think, be reading Robert E. Howard because he's just so great. I certainly think we should see the complete Chronicles of Conan in the Library of America. That should happen. I did actually a whole video on why I think Robert E. Howard should be in the Library of America, so of course he's my number 1 choice. But also, as long as we're talking about Weird Tales writers, Clark Ashton Smith should definitely be in the Library of America. Clark Ashton Smith was an amazing writer. He's enormously unappreciated, I think. More people should be reading this guy, and I think more people would be reading him if they knew about Clark Ashton Smith and if his books were more widely published. This is another author that has a volume in Penguin Classics, deservedly so. And I certainly think Clark Ashton Smith should have at least a couple volumes in the Library of America. He wrote a ton of stories, which are fantastic. And he also wrote a lot of poetry of high quality, which definitely should be in the Library of America. So, yeah, I think we ought to get at least 2 volumes from Clark Ashton Smith. But also, here's a writer that I'm really surprised does not have his own volume in the Library of America. For a long time, I thought he did, but it turns out he doesn't. And that's James M. Kane, who is best known for writing The Postman Always Rings Twice. Quite a well-known crime writer. And I'm really surprised that he doesn't have his own volume. Postman Always Rings Twice is in one of the anthology volumes that the Library of America publishes. So he is in the Library of America with that one book, but he deserves his own volume. And like I said, I'm kind of surprised that he doesn't have one. And I'm not sure why. I think that this is something that should be rectified. Because he certainly wrote more than just that one book, The Postman Always Rings Twice, that could be in the Library of America. So, and he also wrote a number of short stories of high quality as well. So yeah, James M. Kane, why don't you have your own volume in the Library of America? I don't know. This next one, Richard Matheson. Richard Matheson certainly deserves a volume in the Library of America. The fact that Ray Bradbury has a volume gives me hope that Richard Matheson could eventually get in the Library of America. Of course, this is another one of my favorite writers. Writer of The Shrinking Man and I Am Legend and so many great short stories. Another author that is in Penguin Classics. Penguin Classics has a Best of Richard Matheson volume of his short fiction. It could be due to rights issues, publishing rights issues, that he's not in the Library of America already, but he certainly deserves to be. again, another writer who has been very influential, wrote a lot of really great books, and he should be in here just on the strength of his short stories and his early novels. He definitely should have at least one volume in the Library of America. So yeah, Richard Matheson, he should be in here. Next is one that I think actually could happen. I think it's only a matter of time, and that's Harlan Ellison. Harlan Ellison, who's written so many great short stories, one of the most celebrated fantasy and science fiction writers of all time, probably one of the best American short story writers ever. Probably best known now for the short story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, but wrote so many other great stories. Again, another author who's tremendously influential. Certainly his writing is among the most significant in American writing. So I really think that this could happen and that it probably will happen. It's probably only a matter of time before Harlan Ellison gets in the Library of America, but certainly he deserves to be in there. Next is another writer that, if Harlan Ellison deserves to be in here, this author certainly does, and that's Isaac Asimov. And Isaac Asimov, born in Russia, but his nationality was American, so he should be in here. One of the most influential science fiction writers of all time. I think the only reason probably Isaac Asimov isn't in the Library of America is due to rights issues. Library of America would have to get the rights to publish the Foundation series, for example, and the Robot series in Library of America volumes. But it's just, as far as deserving it, Isaac Asimov deserves it. And if Isaac Asimov deserves it, Robert E. Heinlein deserves it as well. Again, another tremendously influential American writer, Heinlein. Occasionally controversial, but certainly a writer who deserves to be in the Library of America. Again, probably the only reason he's not is due to rights issues. I would assume that's the only reason that he's not in the Library of America already. But certainly if they can get him in there, they should get him in there. Not my favorite writer, but certainly a writer who deserves to be in there. I mean, if you look at the writers that the Library of America has published, Heinlein's better than a lot of those writers. So Heinlein should be in there, definitely. Okay, and as long as we're going to include Isaac Asimov, we should also include Alfred Bester. Alfred Bester, who wrote some great science fiction, including The Stars, My Destination. And actually, that book did make it into the Library of America in one of Library of America's science fiction anthologies. So he's in there, but he does not have his own volume, and he certainly deserves his own volume, Alfred Bester. And I hope to see this happen. Who knows? Maybe this will happen eventually. That Bester will get his own volume in the Library of America. But he certainly deserves one, I think. I don't think too many people would argue against that, but we'll see if that ever happens. And speaking of science fiction writers, Fritz Leiber, I think Fritz Leiber should be in the Library of America. Fritz Leiber, who's probably best known for the fantasy series of Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. And how great would it be to have a Library of America volume of the complete Fafner and Grey Mouser stories? Wouldn't that be fantastic? But Leiber wrote an awful lot more than that. He wrote a lot of horror fiction, which was pretty great. And he wrote a lot of science fiction. And so you could at least get 2 or 3 volumes, I think, from Fritz Leiber. At least two you can get from Leiber. And an author, I think, that deserves it. Again, a very significant writer who's influential. He's still read today, although not as much as he probably should be. But yeah, I would love to see Fritz Leiber in the Library of America. And speaking of authors that have been left aside, how about Margaret Miller? And the Margaret Miller I'm talking about is the author of Beast in View. Um, she wrote a lot of mystery novels that were pretty darn good. Beast in View is included in one of Library of America's anthologies, so that one book is in there, but she wrote a lot more than that. Um, and she should be remembered for something other than just being the wife of Ross MacDonald, because she was a pretty great crime writer in her own right. I'm kind of surprised, actually, she doesn't have a volume in the Library of America. And maybe that will happen, but maybe not. She's sort of been forgotten, I think. But I would like to see it. I would like to see it. And as long as we're talking about writers who should be in the Library of America, of course, I'm going to mention this next author. This is number 11. But of course, Edgar Rice Burroughs. Edgar Rice Burroughs, the creator of Tarzan and John Carter of Mars. Library of America, I don't think will ever publish Edgar Rice Burroughs in the Library of America's regular series of books. They did publish a couple special editions of A Princess of Mars and Tarzan of the Apes, but they weren't part of the regular series. And Edgar Rice Burroughs deserves a couple volumes at least in Library of America's regular series, because he certainly has some of the most significant writing in American literature, because he is one of the most influential writers in American history. He was extremely influential, not just in science fiction and fantasy writing, but in films and television and every place else that imitations of Edgar Rice Burroughs' work has appeared. Just tremendously influential, and I think a better writer than most people give him credit for. I think Edgar Rice Burroughs should be in the Library of America. I think so. It'll never happen, but I think he deserves to be in there. So that's my list. Like I said, you probably can come up with a list of your own, but that's mine. Okay, guys, I will shut up now. I will catch you next time.